I'm going to put in the chat. That is the video I did on how to install Docker on your Mac computer.
The problem, is not that I can't install, is that the version, it doesn't work. I can't find a version that works on my system. If I go in the CLI and say Docker version, it come up that I have Docker on it, but the desktop, I can't find a desktop version when I try to install it.
How did you install it? What links did you use to install it?
Let's see. I went to the Docker website first and tried to install it, and the desktop couldn't install because my version of macOS, they said they don't support it.
Okay. I mean, yes, if you are trying to install the desktop and they don't support your version of macOS, then that's what it is. You can substitute that for the Docker Cloud. You just have to make sure your computer meets the required version because in order for you to install Docker, right, and it's the same way for Windows computer as well, there is a required requirement that your system has to meet.
Yeah.
So I'm only seeing your Docker screen now. Docker screen.
All right,
Let me share.
All right, let me go back. All right. There's this fast and
Let me look for the documentation. Install. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and I'll show you. All right, so this is the Docker documentation.
Yeah.
On how to install Docker, right? So you can see here for Windows,
And
it has this requirement, system requirements, mean that you must meet all these requirements to install Docker on your computer. So let's look for the one for Mac. So Mac is here, right? So install Docker desktop on Mac, right? Here, they also have the system requirements. And under the systems requirement, it doesn't really have much anyway. So what's the most recent version of
I meet
macOS?
all of this.
This is
when I try
the
install it.
current release of macOS. This is a new major version of macOS. Stops. Since Docker stops supporting the oldest version and supports the newest version of macOS. In addition to the
That's
previous
my
two
problem.
releases. So you need to install your macOS to the latest version for you to be able to install Docker on it. So you can't have the old versions of macOS and reinstall Docker on it. So that's
my
what this is.
problem.
Yeah. So just update your macOS.
It won't update. That's the problem. It only goes up to
which one are you using? Which Mac are you using?
Let me tell you, 1 minute. Can you see it?
No, I'm sharing my screen. So let me stop sharing.
Sorry.
Yeah, you can share your screen.
Yeah.
MacBook Pro. Big Sur. Yeah, and I don't know much about Mac's current let me look for it real quick. What is the latest Mac. The software. So MacBook is on 14.5.
Yeah.
So yours is 11. So when you click software update, what do you get?
It's not updating to that one. It says this is the highest version. I guess Mac has started some other version. So I was looking for a desktop that would work on this version, but can't
Yeah.
find anything. Yeah.
Apparently, according to the Docker documentation, they only support the
Yeah.
one that I was just showing you. They
Yeah.
only support up to the last two versions of Mac OS.
Mhm.
Docker stopped supporting the oldest version and supports the newest version of Mac OS. So in addition to the previous two releases. So they support the newer version of macOS and the previous two releases. So anything else outside of that, they don't support.
Okay.
So for you now, the only other alternative is if you don't want to get another computer, right? Or well, I'll revisit that. But if you don't want to get another computer, you can build your Docker image from the EC2. So just launch an EC2,
Yeah.
put all your Docker, install Docker on it, build your Docker image from there, push it to your ECR.
Yeah.
Then you can use your image from there. Or if you have another computer, maybe a Windows or Mac,
Yeah, I
build
have
it.
a Windows computer.
Okay.
That's the thing because I have Docker desktop on my Windows computer. So
Okay.
yeah.
So when you click software update here, what do you get?
All right. Let me show here. Check for updates. It's not gonna update because I think it's a totally different system.
System, yeah,
Yeah, that they have now running. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. You might be able to, I don't know, I would say take it to um and they are a big help. Take it to like the Apple Store, right?
Yeah.
And just ask them. They might be able to update it for you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I got
So
I got the good morning. I got the Mac too, but I updated to the 14.5 and I got Docker. So maybe it's an issue between the install because I was using that one he using before about like a couple months ago, but it
mhm,
basically was a forced update. So I don't know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so Mr. Mac, I think you can still update it because I don't you have you have MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
Um, so you should still be able to update it, but maybe there's probably something you have to do to force the update.
Oh,
If you go to the Apple Store, they will do it. They can have
I do
taken
it.
like an old MacBook Air that my niece gave me one time to the store, and they did all the update for me. So
All right.
it
Yeah.
might be worth trying.
Yeah, I'll try that. Yeah, thanks.
No
Appreciate
problem.
it.
No
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Does it
Yeah.
Is anyone talking?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well. I've been talking this whole time, but I've been on mute.
Yeah, you were mute.
Oh, wow. So, Mr. Mark, did you not hear me all these things that I said about going to the Apple Store? Or did I mute myself after that?
It was right after that.
Yeah,
Oh,
after that, yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah, maybe that was, I'm not sure how I went on mute. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So, well, let me, first oh no, what did I do? Oh my God. I think I just lost all the work I just created. Well, I lost that work, but there's a way I can get it back. I can't get it from here, but I'll have to go in the recording and just take a screenshot of it. Anyway, so I lost the image because I didn't even save it, but it's okay. So what I was saying is I was working with one of the students that I mentor, and she's working now. One of the issues she was having, they were having at her job is, one of the issues they were having at her job is every time they had an audit test, they were failing the audit test because they didn't have some type of backup system in place to back up some of the resources. So when they did a research on how they would have backups for some of the resources they are using for their application, they end up deciding to use AWS backup. So she asked me about it and if I've used it before. I haven't used AWS backup before, and that was even the first time I was hearing about it. But I did a research on it, something I found very curious. I did a research on it, and I know we've been talking about some type of security project that we can do. And I felt this would be a good project. So in AWS has a service called AWS Backup. And what you can use this service to do is you can use it to back up the different resources that you are using to deploy your application. So if you type AWS Backup, and select AWS Backup under Services, the first thing I want to show you is the type of resources that AWS Backup can store for you. When you are on the AWS Backup console, if you click Settings, here you can see under Service Opt-in, you'll see all the different services that AWS Backup can store for you. So that's one of the things you should just be aware of. So you can see here, the one that stands out is EC2, EFS, RDS, S3, and so on. So once you are aware of how AWS Backup works, the image that I had on the screen before was to show you pretty much the things you need for AWS Backup, but we can talk about it real quick. So to use AWS Backup, you need a couple of things, right? The first thing you need is a backup vault. Before you create the backup vault, the first thing you need is a KMS key. So let me go to draw.io. Right. So to use AWS Backup, right, the first thing you need is right. To use AWS Backup, the first thing you need is a a KMS key. Right. Then once you create your KMS key, you need an IAM role. When you are creating it, if you don't have an IAM role, AWS will automatically create one for you. So the first thing you need is a KMS key. And when you are creating on the backup, the first thing you need is a KMS key, then an IAM role. Once you have created these two things, the next thing you are going to create is the vault. The next thing you are going to create is the backup vault. So I'm going to hit this. Right. Once you create your backup vault, the vault is just where you are going to be storing all the resources you want to back up. And when you create this backup vault, you will use this KMS key to encrypt the backup vault. Once you create the backup vault, the next thing you'll create is what is called a backup plan. The backup plan has things like how often do you want to back up your resources, for how long you want to back it up, and after you back it up for this long, do you want to delete it? So if you guys are aware of the S3 life cycle, it's kind of like the same concept. Backup plan is just for this resource that I want to back up, how long do I want to back it up, for how long? And after I've backed it up for, let's say, 1 year, what do I want to do with it? So remember, you need a KMS key, IAM role, backup vault, and backup plan. Then once you've created the backup plan, the next thing you are going to create is what is called the backup selection. I think that's what it's called. So the backup selection is where you specify the resource you want to back up. So you specify the resource you want to back up in the backup selection. You put that resource in your backup plan, and you store your backup plan in your backup vault. So if you are looking at this, in the order and how they go, this is what I learned. Let me add numbers here. This will be 1. You create your KMS key. 2, you create an IAM role. This is optional. If you don't create it, AWS will create one for you. But I still want to mention it because you need it. 3, you create a backup vault. 4, you create a backup plan. And 5, you create a backup selection. So this is the relationship between them. You will use your KMS key to encrypt your backup vault. Remember, when you have the vault, you have to encrypt it, right? Then you would use the IAM role to give backup service access to your AWS resources. Remember, in the backup selection, this is where you specify the resources that you want to back up. So you'll use this IAM role to allow the backup service to have access to those resources. Then once you have create your backup selection, you will assign your backup selection to your backup plan, meaning that, let's say, for instance, we want to back up our EC2 instance, and we have add that EC2 instance to the backup selection. We'll now give that selection to the plan, and the plan is going to say, for every 30 days, we want to back up this EC2 instance and store it in the vault, right? So your backup selection, you give that to your backup plan. And your backup plan, once you have your backup plan, for example, here, we are using the EC2 instance, you store that in your vault. That is how the backup service works. So that is the relationship that I found within, this is the relationship that I found with the features that I needed to create a backup in AWS using AWS Backup. So let me show you an example in the console. Remember, I said the first thing we have to do is create a KMS key. So I'm going to go to KMS. Now select KMS under services. I'm going to create a key. I'll just leave it as default symmetric key, and I'll click next here. For the alias of the key, let me call it my name. I'll call it as this. I don't know why I always struggle with just coming up with a name for resource. I'll call it backup test. And I'm going to copy that and use it on that description. And here, I'm not going to add any tags. Click next. And here, you have to select which user you want to be the administrator of the key. So I'm just going to pick my user. I have these two users in my account. I'll pick it. I'll click next. And here, you have to select which users in your account can use the key. So I'm going to select the same users again. Click next. And here, this is just a summary. I'm going to scroll down and click finish. So I have created the key, which is here, backup test key. That is the first step. In the second step, I'm not really going to create the IAM role, but I'll show you when we are creating our backup where you'll see it. If you don't have one, AWS will create it for you. But first, I'm showing you how to do it in the management console. When we get to the Terraform part, I've already prepared the Terraform code that you guys can use. I'll show you in the Terraform code where we are creating it. So the next thing is we'll create an IAM role, but we'll skip this for now because in the AWS backup service, it will create one for us if we don't have one. So next, we'll create our backup vault. I'm going to type backup in the search. Select AWS backup under services. Remember, before you create your backup plan, you have to create a vault that you want to store all your backup in. So I'm going to select backup vaults here and click create backup vault. Give the backup vault a name. I'll call it the same name, backup test. Then once you give your backup vault a name, you have to select the KMS key you want to use to encrypt the vault. I'm going to pick the KMS key I just created. Backup test, this KMS key. Then I'm going to click create backup vault. That's all you need to do to create the vault. Once you have created the backup vault, if you can see here, we created the backup vault. We encrypted it with the KMS key. Once you have created the backup vault, the next feature we will create is the backup plan. So here, we'll come to plan, backup plans. We'll select backup plans, right? Then you'll click create backup plan. So AWS has a default backup plan you can use that already has the template here. if you want to use that, you can just select which template you want to use. So here you can see daily, 35 days, and retention. So what this is saying is for how often do you want to back up? You can back up daily, monthly, for a year. And I think this is daily, monthly, and the retention is for a year. And this is daily, weekly, monthly, and the retention is for 5 years. So you can use one of AWS template. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to show you if you want to create your own backup plan without using AWS template. Because when we create our Terraform code, you'll see it in there. It will make more sense to you. So if you select this option, this is how you create your own backup plan. And here, you can give it a name and just call it backup test. And here, this is where you select the schedule. So here, this is where you select the schedule. And under this schedule, this is your backup rule configuration. This is where you specify how often you want to back up the resource you are trying to back up and how long you want to back it up. So here, I'll give it a name. I'll just call it the same name, backup test. Then then next, you are going to pick the vault where you want to store it in. This is the vault I just created, the backup test. I'll select it. Then backup frequency. How frequent do you want to back it up? We are going to select either daily, weekly, monthly, or a custom cron job here. We can just select weekly. Now I'll select daily. But if you select weekly, you can select what days you want to back it up. So I'll select weekly. I mean daily. I'm going to select daily. Then under the backup window, this is what time you want the backup to start during the day that you've specified. I'm going to leave this option as default, but if you want to change it, you can change the time. Start within 8 hours and complete within 7 days, right? So we'll leave this option as default and enable continuous backup for point-in-time recovery. So when I was reading this, this allows you to be able to go back within 1 second of a precise time. I'm just going to enable this because in case if you need to recover a data, you can go back in time to almost a precise time and be able to get the backup for that time. And here, I guess once you select this, you won't have this life cycle rule. AWS would pick that for you. But let's say we didn't check this, right? Under the life cycle, you can specify when you move your backup from warm to cold. This just means that after you've stored your backup for the number of days you want to store it, or weeks or year, right? After that time and you really don't need them anymore, you can move them into the cold storage, which after that, whatever you are backing up will be deleted. So if I select this option here and time in warm storage, here I can pick maybe a year, 1 year, and total retention. And here, if you read here, it is telling you that by default, the amount of time you can have in warm storage is 365 days plus another 90 days in the cold storage. So here I can probably just put 90 there. No, so the 90, right, will be this here is the total retention. So it will be 90 plus 365. So the same must be set between 455 days. So here I'm just going to put 455. So you can see here how it is allocated in your warm Storage, you have one here. Then after that, your code storage, it will be stored for 3 months before it is deleted. Then if you want to copy it to a different region, your backup to a different region, you will enable that here, but I'm not going to enable that. And this application consistency backup, this just says enable application consistency snapshot for the selected third-party software running on EC2 instance. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it just sounds like if you want to also get some backup for third parties software running on an EC2 instance, you can select it. And here they have Windows VSS. I'm just going to select it and create the backup plan. So once you create the backup plan, remember I said you create your backup plan here, right? And we've specified that we are storing the backup plan in the vault. Next, what you are seeing on the screen is now you have to create your resource selection, which is the one I call the backup selection here, which is the resource you want to back up. So here, you can include all resource type or include specific resource type. I'm going to select include specific resource type. Select specific resource type here. If you click this drop down, you'll see all the resource you can back up. The only resource I have now is S3. I'll select S3. And here, you have to select the S3 bucket you want to back up. You can either back up all your S3 bucket, or if you want to check this, you can back up specific S3 bucket. When I was trying this out, it won't let you back up an S3 bucket unless you have versioning enabled. On a lot of this bucket, I don't have versioning enabled, but I know I have versioning enabled for the Terraform state file bucket, this bucket. So make sure when you are selecting your S3 bucket, you have to have versioning enabled for the S3 bucket before you can back it up in the vault. So I'm going to select I'm going to select this S3 bucket. If you want to back up specific item in the S3 bucket, you can do that. I'm not going to select that. These are optional. I just want to just back up this S3 bucket. And I'm going to click assign resources. Okay, I need to give it a name here. So I'll give it in. Okay, so up here, under this assign, I'm not sure why my screen zoomed in all the way here, but first you need to give it a name, right? Then you need to select your IAM role. So this is where I was saying that you have to create an IAM role. And you can see here, if you don't have a default role, AWS will create one for you. Or if you already have your role that you created, you can select your role here. So I'm just going to let AWS create the role for me. And we've selected our S3 bucket here. I'm going to click assign resources. And there you go. I've created the AWS backup. And here, if we look at the plan, we can see the backup plan here. We are in the backup plan. In the backup plan, we have the rule, which if you select the rule, that specifies how frequent you want to run the backup. Here you can see frequency. We are going to run it daily at 12:30 a.m. America, New York time, right? It is going to transition into the cold storage after 1 year. And total retention period is going to be 65 weeks. It is going to start within 8 hours and so on. So, and you can also see the backup vault that we are storing this plan in. Remember I said the plan, you store the plan in the vault. So yeah, you can see the backup vault we are storing the plan in. If we go back, we can now see the resource assignment. If you select it, here we are going to store this S3 bucket in our backup vault, and we've given it this IAM role that will allow the backup service to be able to access that S3 bucket and store it in the vault. So this is pretty much the backup service, how it works. It is very straightforward. This job hasn't run now, but once it runs, you would see, once it runs, you will see the job. Let me see where you see backup vault. Recovery point in the vault, you are going to see all the backups here. They are going to show up in this recovery point. So because the job hasn't run yet, you won't see anything yet. So from the management console, this is how you create the backup. And next, I'm going to show you how to create this using Terraform. So I've already created the Terraform code. I'm going to send it in the chat. You guys can download it. And I also create a README file in that code that is showing you how to use it, right? But yes, you can use that Terraform code to pretty much create your backup for any resource you want to back up. The other thing is I created it using Terraform module. So, and I'll explain the reason why I did it that way. It's going to be easier because when you are backing up resource, I want us to be able to separate the different resources we want to back up. Instead of us lumping EC2, S3, RDS in one vault, we can have separate vaults for the separate resources that we want to back up. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for now?
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
I got two questions about it. So are there any limitations like on the size or the number of backups you can do in this thing?
I haven't looked into it, but I don't think so. Because it goes by your retention period, right? Because as you are backing it up, as you are backing up your resources in the vault, it is being moved to like the cold storage after whatever days you specify, and you can delete it after that. So, and I don't know, maybe on the back end, they are probably using S3 bucket. It's probably where they're storing all the backups in. So I don't think you have these limitations to as many backups here, because the more you have in there, the more it's going to cost you anyway. So
yeah,
I don't think so.
And then I guess the second question to kind of go with that, the cost. But the is it decoupled? So like example would be like if somebody got into your AWS account and like encrypted everything, would it be decoupled where like they couldn't get to your backups, or is it all in one unified place where it's at risk anyway?
Remember, the backup, you are encrypting it with the KMS key, and you are only assigning the KMS key to users that you want to be able to encrypt or decrypt it. So as long as you follow the proper procedure in the best practice with it, you should be fine, because you can assign only certain people to be able to encrypt it and certain people to be able to decrypt it. So you should be fine. So this is the pricing on if you want to check what it will cost for your backup. So you can see for a lot of these services actually free. Yeah. So
Thank you.
yeah. So that I haven't looked into it. I haven't looked into.
Sorry, I joined a little bit late. What is the aim of creating this backup? What is it used for? Sorry.
If you have resources running the resources that you are using to create your application, like S3, EC2, RDS, and things like that, you can back those resources up so you can use them later on for disaster recovery. In case if something happened, you can go back to a point in time and recover those resources at that time and reuse them in case if you lose them.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to send you guys a zip file. Whose nice computer is this? Oh, that's a nice setup. I'm just saying that for the first time. Okay. I'm going to send you guys the module in the chat. You guys can download it if you want. Then I'll run it here just to show you how to run it. Okay. Once you download that module, it should show up in your downloads right here. I'm going to unzip it. And in here, you will see pretty much the main.tf file, the outputs, and the variables file. And let me create a folder for this project. So you can create a project, you can create a folder for the project and call it backup. Or you can call it AWS backup, whatever you want to call it. Then put this zip file, once you have unzip it, drop that unzip version of that module in that folder. So here I'm just storing my modules locally, but you can store it in GitHub if you want. So next thing, I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. So pretty much this project folder, let me call it backup project. So basically this backup project, I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. Here, I'm going to select open folder, and I'm going to browse to the location. This is the backup project folder. Select it and click select folder. Right. So I've opened it in Visual Studio Code. You can see in Visual Studio Code, you will see that module that I just gave you. It is in the AWS backup module. In it, let me zoom in here so you guys can see better. In it, we have the main.tf, right? The outputs.tf and the variables.tf. So you really don't need to change anything in this module. All you can do is just use it. Let me zoom out a little bit. In the main.tf, just to explain what is in it, it is exactly as what I explained when we created it in the management console. First, we are going to create our KMS key, right? Then once we create our KMS key, we create an IAM role. You can see here, the IAM role is the service that is allowed to assume this IAM role is the backup service. And the policy we are attaching to the role is the AWS backup service role policy for backup. This is a AWS managed policy. Once we create the KMS key and the IAM role, we create our vault. You can see that we are encrypting the vault with our KMS key. Then we create our backup plan. And once we create our backup plan, we create the backup selection. One thing I want to point out here is the backup plan. You can see that it is stored in the vault. And the backup selection here, we are attaching the IAM role to it, and it is assigned to the backup plan. So that's pretty much all we need for this module. So if you want to use it, right, you have your modules folder here. So you can create another folder in your project. So make sure you are not in your modules directory. Just click anywhere in here and create a new folder. Let's call this environment dev. We're just going to use it for testing. And one thing I also printed out for you here is in this README file, I am showing you exactly how to use it. So you can, to call this module, this is all you need. You just need this code module, whatever the name of your module is, the source, and these are the variables you need. And another thing I did is I create data source, right? Data source here. And the point of this data source is, remember when you are creating your selection, that is where you add all the resources to the plan that you want to back up, right? So what if you have like 20 EC2 instances in your management console? So I want a way where we can get all the EC2 instances that are in our management console if we want to back those EC2 instances in the vault. So that is why I'm using data source here. So what this data source would do is it would get all the EC2 instances that are running, right, in our AWS account. Then we are using the local variable here to form. We are using the local variable here to create the ARN of those EC2 instances. You'll see it in the code here. It is just saying for IDs in data.aws instance or instance. So pretty much for IDs in all the instances we get here, the ARN is this. So we are forming the ARN because that is what we will use in our backup selection. This part is optional if you want to get all the resources in your account as opposed to getting one resource. So in this new project, I'm going to create a new file in it. I'm going to call it main.tf. And I'm going to go to that README file and I'm going to copy this. And I'll paste it in my README file. So remember to remove this HCL. So if you select it, press Control F. If you highlight it over here, right, you can see I've highlighted here. I'm going to press Control F. That's going to find it, and I'm going to press this drop down. And in the replace, I'm going to leave nothing in there. So it is going to find all instances on my file with this HCL and remove it. So I'm going to press this remove, and that should remove it. The reason why I add that in there is because when you add that README file into your GitHub repository, it will show it in a very professional way where it will be easy for someone to copy the code when they need to copy it. So this is what your project will look like, right? Remember I said this data source, I'm using it to be able to get all the resources. In this particular example, I want to back up the EC2 instances. So I'm using data source to get all the EC2 instances in my account. Once you've copied that and pasted here, all you just need to do is enter. I'll explain this, but the next thing we can do is you can create your provider file because that is how you will authenticate. So I'm going to select this dev file. I'm going to select new file and I'll call it providers. .tf. So in my providers.tf, I'm going to create an AWS provider. So I'm just going to leave my AWS provider like this. When you run the AWS provider like this, it is going to use whatever default credentials you configured for your AWS CLI. So if anyone is watching, the point of this tutorial is to show you how AWS backup works, right? So I'm not trying to teach you how Terraform works. You kind of have to understand Terraform, how to use Terraform. Is this more of advanced for those people that understands how to use Terraform? So you have to also understand how to configure your AWS. You also have to understand how to configure your CLI on your computer. I feel like if you are working on any Terraform project or any CLI project, that is the first thing you should understand. How does AWS CLI works? Configuring it on your computer. You shouldn't have any issues doing that at this stage if you are working on a project like this. So I'm going to use the default credentials that I already configured on my computer and in my main.tf. Remember this, the only reason why I have this data AWS caller identity, this data source type is going to get your account ID. We need that account ID over here to create our ARN. So this first one will get our AWS account ID, right? And this data source will get all the EC2 instances that is running in the account I've specified. Then this is just a variable to get my region. And if you want to separate all this into like a variables.tf file, you can do that as well. And this local is creating our EC2 instance ARN. So it will just take all the EC2 instance this resource gets, and we are saying for ID in data source, AWS EC2, AWS instance dot all instance, which is this, we are going to form the ARN. So to form the ARN of an EC2 instance is ARN EC2, the region, the account ID, instance, and the ID. So that is what that is done. Then this is going to call our module, right? So once you call the module, you can give it any name you want. We have the source here, which this is saying these two dots means we are in this directory, right? Our Terraform code is going to run in this directory, but we are telling it where the module is located. So the two dots means go out of this directory. Once you come out of that directory, look for the AWS backup module, which is the name of this folder. So the two dot means it is going to come outside of this dev directory and go into the AWS backup module. That is where it is going to find the module. And for that module, these are the inputs you have to add for it. You have to add the KMS key, right? The KMS key, alias name. So for this, because I already created one with test, I'm going to call this my name. Call it as this, backup. Then you are going to give the backup vault a name. Let's call it as this. Backup plan a name. This. And the backup rule a name. I'm going to call it as this. So the backup schedule, this is the cron job. This is where you specify how frequent you want to, the cron, here I'm using a cron job. This is how you can also specify how you want to run, when you want to run the backup. If you go in the README file, there is a explanation for all that stuff in here. But also if you come into the modules, right? The variable, let me come. So in the module, right, I add a note here that is explaining what, when you see a cron job like this, what each one means. So the first 0 you see, that is in minutes. The 12 is in hours. So this is saying at 12 p.m., right? The star you see here, that is the number of days. And if you put star there, you are just saying any day. The next one is a month. So here we are saying any month. So this one has no specific value. So here we just put like a question mark, and the last one is a day of the week. So we are saying any day of the week. So that notice here, if you guys want to see what that cron job would do. And so that's that. And our backup start window, we are saying 60 minutes. And another thing is, if you hover over this here, it will also tell you, it will also give you a description of what each input is. So you can see here the name of the backup vault, the name of the backup plan, and so on. So the cold storage is the number of days to move back up to cold storage. So just in case if you don't know what this means, if you hover over it, it will give you, right? Delete after number of days. The number of days to delete the backup, right? So for this, this is the backup selection. So I'll just give you my name again. And the backup row. So pretty much everything we just created using the management console is what we have here. And the next thing I'm going to do is, before I run it, we aren't probably not going to see anything in here, because we are not going to see anything in our recovery point, because the backup doesn't run immediately. It runs based on the time you schedule, but I think there's a way you can run it immediately if you want to run it. So here, first I'm going to create EC2 instance. Since my backup is based on the EC2 instance service, I'm going to just launch some EC2 instance. Maybe I'll launch 3 EC2 instances. I'll just leave all these options as default. I'll launch the EC2 instance. Oh, hello, Dylan. I don't see you in the, Dylan, I don't see you in the waiting room. Can you try to join again? All right. So I've created the EC2 instances. They are here, right? So now I'm going to save this file, save all. And now I'm just going to run this project. So I'm going to open the terminal into that directory. And I'm going to type Terraform in it. Then I'm going to type Terraform plan. Sorry, my Zoom thing is in the way. So here we can see the resources that it will create. Pretty much everything we discussed. You can see in our selection here, which is where we select the resources we want to back up. You can see all the 3 EC2 instances I created are here. So that is the point, that this is the reason why I am using the data source. If you guys want to add that feature where you are able to select all the resources, then you can use this data source example to do that. So next, I'm going to run Terraform apply. and I'll type yes. It's creating it. I'll just give it some time. All right, and that is done. So if I go in the management console and I'll go to the AWS backup. First, we are going to check the backup vault. You can see the one I just created is here, AWS backup vault, right? So what I should have called it is EC2 because since I'm using that for EC2. So here you can see the backup vault, right? Then the backup plan. You can see my backup plan here. This is it. In the backup plan, we have our backup rule that specifies how frequent we want to back this resource in the vault. Here I'm using a cron job. It's going to start within 1 hour, complete within 3 hours. Retention period is a year. Transition into cold storage after 1 month. And I'm storing it in this backup vault. So here we have the backup selection, which has all the EC2 instances that I want to run the backup for. So let me see. That is pretty much, this is it. This is how you create, this is how you use this Terraform module to create a backup. So when I was working with one of my students where we were working on this, right? The next, one of the ideas things that I was mentioning to her is when you are using this module, right? Here, you can see I'm using this module. I'm calling the backend module. This is one of the importance of using Terraform module. Here, you can see that I'm using this module. I'm calling this backend module, but I'm only using it to create the backup for the EC2 instances because I want to group all the EC2 instances in one vault. Let's say you want to now group S3 in one vault, right? You can just copy this, paste it down here, and follow the same step. So I shall have called this EC2. So this, the module name will be S3. Then you give the vault a name. You can call this vault S3 vault, S3 backup plan. S3 rule, right? S3 backup selection. And S3 here. So since I don't want to back up all the S3 bucket, right? Remember I said you have to have your S3 bucket has to have versioning enabled. If versioning is not enabled, you won't be able to run the backup on it. So I don't have versioning enabled on all the S3 buckets. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the ARN of that Terraform state file bucket because I know that one has versioning enabled. So this is the ARN of that bucket. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it here. The only thing I need to make sure here is, I think this is a list. So backup resource. Yeah, so that is a list. So yeah, if you choose to enter it like that, you can just enter it. You have to enter your value like this. So I'm going to save it. And I'm going to open my terminal. Then I'm going to run Terraform in it. Terraform plan. And Terraform apply. On type yes. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So here I forgot to change my KMS key name here. So let me do that again. S3. I need a different key. Going to save it. And Terraform. Init. Terraform. Apply. Yes. There you go. So now if I go in the management console and I'm going to go to the backup service. Here, I'm going to select the backup vault. You can see I have another vault for S3. So the first one I created could have been EC2 instance. I just picked my name for that one. So the idea I'm trying to explain is for all the different services you guys may be running a backup for, you don't have to store all those services in one vault. You can have separate vault based on the service you are storing the backup. So this would be my EC2 vault, and this would be the S3 vault. So if we look at the backup plan, there's the backup plan for the S3 resource. If you select it, and here you can see the backup rule, the backup selection, it has my S3 bucket in it. That's pretty much what I wanted to show you guys on pretty much AWS backup, because I know everyone has asked about something security related. This is definitely something good you can add to your resume. Company always backup, finding a way to protect data is always going to be important to companies, right? So this is definitely a good service in AWS that you can use to protect data. I like it because rather than going to each individual service where S3, you can try to set up retention. In RDS, you can take snapshots for DynamoDB, whatever DynamoDB has, right? This is one service that can allow you to take the snapshot of all the services and store it somewhere where you can use it later on. And I've been working for so many years. This is the first time I'm finding out about it too. So I just wanted to share with you guys. Like I said, that Terraform code all you have to do is just follow the examples, use it to call the module, and you can run it to create a backup for any of the services that is in here. So any of this service you can run the backup for. Do you guys
So
have any question?
so if you take a snapshot of the services, right? Then you would store it in your S3 bucket and enable versioning and then back it up.
Oh, I said that again.
So if you take like you say, you could take a snapshot, all right, of the services. So like if I did like a launch template, did like some configurations, took a snapshot of it. Would I store it in my S3 bucket and enable versioning and then do the backup?
No. So for whatever service you are running, the backup service can do the backup for you
Okay. So I
directly.
would need to do the snapshot then. I could just
You don't need to do a snapshot. Yeah, you can just, all you need to do, let's say you are running EC2 instance, right? All you need to do is specify the ARN of the EC2 instance, and the backup service would take all the necessary steps to back that EC2 instance up for you.
Okay. Okay.
So on the S3 buckets that you did not have versioning on, what can you do about that if you want to back it up? Because
You would have to enable back versioning on it. So so in the management console, I think when I was creating it, so let's see backup plan. Now just test. Take my S3 vault. I'll leave all this as default. Leave all this as default. And I'll just click create plan. So here I'm going to include specific resource, S3. And here I'm going to choose one of this one that doesn't have versioning enabled. Let me try this one. You can see the following bucket does not have versioning enabled. To assign the bucket to a backup plan, turn on versioning for the S3 for the bucket in S3, or select a different bucket with versioning enabled. So you have to enable versioning on any bucket that you want to run the backup for.
okay, thanks.
No problem. All right. Does anyone else have any question?
So sorry, I have a question. So it's a regional service, right?
Yes, it is.
So what happens so I'm guessing you're gonna have to run like that backup planning. If you have work resources in separate versions, you're gonna have to do that in two separate versions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I saw here where, let me cancel, right? Let's
There might be some sort of
backup.
replication rule.
Yeah, there
I
is,
wonder.
there's backup plan here, test, right?
What was the question?
Test, backup vault, right?
No, the question is about it's region specific. So I'm wondering if
So
yeah,
you can see
exactly.
here, you can
Yeah, create the
upload the
copy in
back,
different regions
you
is
can
with different
upload,
regions, right? Yeah.
yep. So
Okay.
there is that option here. And I think I saw somewhere too where
You can incorporate it with AWS organization and it works just fine.
I was just about to ask that.
yeah. So
Can you
I think
incorporate it with that?
I saw somewhere too where where there was an option. Was that the
Cross accounts monitoring at the bottom.
where?
Scroll down, cross account monitoring at the bottom.
That'd be on the organizations, yeah. Yep, backup jobs.
Yeah, so there's an option for you to definitely run it in multiple region, but that was the KMS key. Never mind. I know I saw, and I'll look into it some more, but you can create a backup in one region and store it in another region.
Another region, yeah.
You can even
Create
on the
can you create
one.
in
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, can you create in one account and back it up in another account? I think.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So you will have to create is the same kind of process.
Just
When I was working with the students I was working with, that was the next thing we had to do. But we haven't done that part yet.
yeah.
So, but in order to, based on the research I did, you would have to create a cross account role.
Cross account rule. Okay.
Then that allows the backup service to assume the role.
The role, yeah.
then
Okay.
then in the other account, you have to have the vault there already. Then you can run the backup and store it in that account. Because the
So
vault,
that
you need the vault, right? This backup vault has to be in that account. Just like if you are on this one, you see that if you are running this backup from one region to another region, you would have to create the vault in that region. Then you can run the backup to that vault. So let's see here. So I'm in Virginia region here. Let me switch to Ohio. Right. There's a default vault. I'm just going to create a test vault here. I'll just pick a default key, create vault. So this is my Ohio region. Go back to my Virginia region and backup plan, create backup plan. And that's going to test, backup vault, daily, whatever. There you
okay,
go.
perfect, yeah.
And you get, they also even give you the option to create a new backup vault in here. You don't even have to go create it for you. I like always creating it first. And there's, here you go, look at it.
You can copy to another account vault.
Then there is also the feature to copy to another account. And you
So that
specify
means
that account's, vault ARN. But you will have to have all the role that is the backup service we are using on the backup service will have to be a cross account role.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good service to use. I mean,
So I don't know if you know, Fee, but so as far as integration, let's say you have like on-premise, does it have the capability to pull them from on-prem?
no, this looks like AWS resources alone. So this under settings, where is it? Under settings, these are the services you can back up. So are you saying like if you have a workload on-prem and you want to get those workload and back them up to a vault in AWS?
Yeah, yeah. I guess
I'm not sure. I don't think so. We can look at the documentation and see whatever the capabilities are, but from what I can see here, I think this is more for like AWS resources you are running in AWS.
Okay,
But I guess you can use maybe FSX for the file server, and I guess share that and then back it up. Can you do that?
Yeah. So any of these that has the check mark, you can run the backup for them.
Yep, that's a good option.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's pretty much the AWS backup service. And this is something someone is using in their production account right now. So I wanted to share with you guys.
And I have a question as this. So in that production account, would they ideally have to now, let's say they have 10 accounts, right? In production, 10 accounts for 10 different like projects. Would they now have to go in and create a backup in each project, in each account? Or ideally they would create an account that would be for backup, and then they'll just have, like the whole cross account that we saw now, which would just be taking backups from those accounts and storing it in this in the backup account. I'm just trying to understand like
I
how
think
would this be done in production here?
you will still have to create your backup in those accounts.
In those accounts, yeah. It's
But
just that
then
the
from
storage of
there,
it.
you just have to, then you can specify, you can have one central location where your backups is being stored, right? So
Okay.
it's just like if you are collecting CloudWatch logs from one account, right? You still need the logs from that account, but it's just where you are storing it. In this case, we have resources in, then let's look at it this way. we have resources in one account. We want to protect those resources where, in case we need to do disaster recovery, we can get those resources back. So when we are backing those resources up, the extra layer of security you can add to it is storing it in a different account. So you still have that feature in your account that is creating the backup, but you are just storing the backup elsewhere. You get what I'm saying? So the backup can still be in your account, but in the account you are storing it, that can be like a central account that nobody has access to. Only the disaster recovery team has access to. Even though the backup still exists in that account, but then in the other account you are storing it, that is for only people that wants to do disaster recovery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I was just wondering, like, if they are only storing the account in each if they're storing the backup in its account, then yeah, it's good for compliance and security. But they'll, like you mentioned, disaster recovery is key, right? They have to make sure that that backup is somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it has to, and based on what we can see here in this console, right?
Yeah, copy to destination and things
So
like that.
we can copy to destination, right? So we are still running the backup, the plan from this account,
This
right?
account, yeah.
We just have the additional option to also store it in a different account for. Now you can say we have two backups now, right?
Yeah.
One in this account and for worst case scenario in another account, that when they have the backups in another account, almost nobody has access to it except for the right teams that needs to have access to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is that option here. We can store in a different region and we can also store in another account. Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any other question? Okay. So you guys run the Terraform code. Like I said, the Terraform code in the module itself, unless if you just want to add other features to it. On the module, you won't necessarily have to touch anything, right? But like I always say, you guys, I'm just giving you guys the basic module that works. This is what we both came up with, which they are using in their production environment right now. So it's very simple, straight to the point, but you guys are always more than welcome to enhance it, add your own feature or anything you see that you can add to it. So once you have the module, you can call the module here as many times as you want for all the resources you want to back up. So one of the things I didn't enable in that module is that option for cross account. So you guys can enable that in it if you want. So yeah, that's how this module works. Lynette, if you want to join, the link is in this video's description. You can check in there to join. All right. Does anyone else have any question? Because if not, then we can end here today. So you guys can run it and let me know if you run into any issues, right? And we'll go from there. But I think this is definitely a good project to have on your resume. For I know a lot of you, Mr. Mark, I know you said you wanted to do something security related. I'll say this is definitely something good to add to your resume on that.
Yeah, definitely.
It seems it can be used on premises the way, because I'm going through the documentation right now.
Okay.
I saw something related on premises. So.
Okay, let me. Okay, do you know where? And I didn't read the documentation heavy. Backup pricing. Oh, I'm under pricing here. Features. Overview. Okay. So simplify data project protection of application resource on AWS and hybrid service. What does that mean?
Hybrid is.
So does that mean on premises as well?
Yeah.
Hybrid, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
If you really Google AWS backup, you will see it while reading the documentation.
Use AWS. Data. You can use AWS for dual offsite storage of your on-premises infrastructure backup. Okay, so this is a documentation for it. Okay. Backup and recovery from on-premises infrastructure to AWS. So yes, even though this has the keyword here, I don't think this is AWS backup service. This is like a different service you can use, like different methods you can back up on premise, right? Are you guys? Do you guys agree with me, or am I interpreting it wrong?
So I think the way it will probably work is something like, you know, when you have this, you have your on-prem, then you have those storage gateways that's it's attached to your on-prem resources. Then you take that storage gateway into something like, and then you move it to something like S3, and then you back up that S3 bucket.
S3 bucket. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So technically it's not you're not backing up directly from the on-prem. It's just that you have that connection from on-prem
to S3
to AWS, and then you back up that resource in AWS. So yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So Salary, yeah, you are right. And it's just so it's like a two-step process. So which is kind of like what this is saying, right? So here from the on-prem to this S3, then like Wahab was saying, we can back up this S3 itself, or this Amazon EBS, or this EC2 instance to the storage, right? Which makes sense. Yeah, but I don't think the service itself, the backup service itself, has direct access to your own premises.
Premises, okay.
Okay. Well, that was what I learned this week. I wanted to share that with you guys. We're pretty much at time now. So if when I'm trying to find one new thing that we haven't discussed before that is also outside of the normal stuff we always do every week. That's something I'm trying to learn too. Once I learn that, I'm going to be sharing it with you guys. The other one that I've done at work before is I did one with AWS Glue and Athena. Funny enough, one of the two offers that I got, when they gave me the code test, when the guy was sharing his screen and he was asking me it was just a Terraform code, and he said, can you explain what this means to me? I pretty much knew what it was, because recently, before that interview, I worked on something with writing a Terraform code for Athena and Glue. So I can work on that project again, and I can share it with you guys once I'm done. But one key thing that I want to mention to you guys is anytime you are in an interview and someone is sharing a Terraform code and they are asking you to tell them what the code is doing, what resource the code is creating, right? All you have to do is look at the resource type. For the resource type, it will tell you what resource you are creating. So that is one hint on if someone is sharing their code, because you can just say, oh yeah, this line 31, it is creating an IAM role policy that it is going to attach to an IAM role. You can see this says role policy attachment, and it is attaching it to this role. And this is the policy ARN. So for every resource they are sharing with you on the screen, just look at the resource type. That will tell you exactly what that resource is creating. So I'm saying that just in case if someone is sharing their Terraform code and it is a resource you haven't created before, look at the resource type and it will tell you. Does that make sense? Can you guys look at a resource type and be able to just wing it and tell, okay, I know this resources. Look at the resource type and look at the arguments. Then that will just give you a good hint on how to explain what that resource is doing. At least that's one thing I do.
On that, I guess on that code test thing, did they have comments in it, or they didn't have comments in it?
It had no comment.
No comments. Okay.
No. So another code test that I've seen is how did they, okay. Another code test, another thing he asked me is something like this. So another thing he asked me was something like this. He said, for this value, how did he even say? I can't remember exactly how he said it. But he was pretty much saying, for this value, how can I enhance it? What is the other way I can? I don't think he said dynamic because he didn't really want to give me too much hint. He was just saying that, he was saying like, look at this code. Is there any other way you can improve this code? Something like that, right? But obviously this is a poor example I'm using, right? So I think what he had was like I know what he had. It was like let's think of, let me see if I can write one real quick. Resource. AWS. Let's go instances. Is it instances or is it EC2? Yes. Right. Instance type. So he had something like this. So that was what he had. Something like that. Right. So he had like something like an EC2 instance or something, right? And some of the values was hard coded. So he was saying like, look at this code. Is there a way you can improve this code? So it's like, if you ever see that on someone's code, just for the value of like an instance type or things like that, those can be a variable. So I just told him, for your instance type, I can write that as a variable and dynamically add that value as a variable. That's what I said. And another question they asked me was about the stuff we discussed last week. So the guy started with it was a DevOps engineer position, and I was speaking to the director. It was the last stage of the interview. So he said, "Oh, how was your last interview?" I was like, it was fine. Who did you speak to? I spoke to so. What did you guys talk about? We talked about just cloud and DevOps and this and that. So then he's going to ask me, okay, so what is DevOps, right? So I just explained in my own simple terms, like DevOps is just a process, right? It's like a set of tools we can use to automate our cloud deployment to make it more efficient. I mean, that's how I always explain it. Then I explain like using tools like Terraform, Ansible, and stuff like that. Then he now said, okay, good. Tell me how, something I can't remember specifically how he said it, but it was a question where he had Terraform and Ansible together. And he told me, tell me how you use Ansible for infrastructure deployment. So if someone ever, and I remember I had that interview maybe like a week after we had that Saturday when we were having that conversation about the whole DevOps, what is the best tools to use for the deployment. And what about that video link that has which tools you should. I know, Yashon, you had the questions too. So I just told him, I said, that's a trick question that you don't use Ansible for infrastructure deployment. Even though Ansible you can create EC2 instance with Ansible or create all these resources in AWS with Ansible, you don't use Ansible for that. And he was smiling, but that was a trick question. he wanted to trick me, but I said, you know, then I gave him the reasons why you wouldn't use Ansible for infrastructure deployment and what Ansible is good for, and on the alternate side, what you can use for your infrastructure deployment, which I said use Terraform or CloudFormation. So I wanted to mention that to you guys. That was like, I literally had that in an interview. The next interview I had, that was the question the guy asked me. So when we had that discussion of understanding the different tools that we use in DevOps, and even though all of those tools can do the same thing, what is the best tool for the workload we are trying to achieve, right? You guys, it's something important that you guys should keep in mind. So yeah, someone just
one quick question. It's kind of a little bit on this topic, but it's off. So like I had a kind of interview recently, and one of the interviewers asked me a question similar to what would be a great day for you, like as a cloud engineer? And I didn't know how to, it was so broad, like it was kind of like I didn't know really. I tackled it, but I didn't know how would you answer that question?
a great day. I mean, did I it depends. It depends on how the interview is going. Like, let's say I'm just trying to wing it. I'm just probably, if I'm trying to wing it and just say something that I think sounds good, I would say something about just supporting something along the line of supporting our customers, right? Successfully remediating any production issues we have, making sure we are meeting deadlines on any deliverable items to our customers and our client. That would be a great day, right? Something that has to do with solving problem. That's what I'll say. Because really, as a cloud engineer, that's your job. On a day-to-day, you are always solving problem. And that's one thing I always emphasize that you guys should keep in mind. And if I think about my day-to-day I walk through, it's always that. It's always solving one problem or the other. And the problem is not necessarily, sometimes it's like troubleshooting something that broke, and sometimes it's just adding a feature to a service you guys already deployed. No matter how you look at it, is you are solving problem. You are trying to meet a deadline to deliver. You have something that is assigned to you in a sprint, which leads to the overall workload to your customer, right? And you are trying to deliver that to them. So a good day will be just being able to accomplish the goals we've set for ourselves and being able to deliver our product to our customer or remediating any production issues we have. That's what I'll say.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I kind of answered it along. I talked about planning and collaboration and solving problems and then testing and execution, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So do you guys have any other question? If not, that will pretty much be it for today. Thank you guys. So I'll think of the next demo we can do of something we can discuss. And also, I'm also putting it out as a challenge to you guys. One of the things you would have to do at work, most companies do it. I'm not sure, not everyone, but you might be in a position that does it. And if you guys are, for those of you that are working, if it is something you do at your company, let me know. Every now and then they will schedule, you have like a demo session. I know at my company, we do it every 2 weeks. At the end of the sprint, you would have to demo what you did in the last sprint. It could be the work you did and work you did, how you helped the customer, or it could be something you're working on that you want to share with the team. So if you guys are also working on other cool things that you are learning, like maybe around AWS Terraform that you want to demo, here is like a good place to get in a habit of doing that. Because the more you get used to speaking in front of people, sharing your screen, which is another skills you guys should not underestimate. Sharing your, because sometimes when you guys share your screen, you get nervous. I used to get nervous too in the beginning. Sharing your screen, speaking in front of people, if you get in a habit of doing that now, you'll just be used to it when you start working. So something to keep in mind. So if you have anything you want to share on any of the Saturdays, let me know. you can
Okay.
have the floor and share as well.
All right, thanks. That will help with the interview too. So when you're sharing this,
I have something I want to share, but it's more of a question. But I guess I'll wait till next week. It's not a big deal.
Okay. So is it like around like a project or
Well, I want to combine the stuff I've been learning for the front end with the I know you said we can use our own applications.
Mhm.
So I wanted to show you and see like how the best to deploy, if I should deploy it through EC2 or should I deploy it another way? Because I tried to do it before, but it was a little complicated because I was following one of the other videos that we was doing the RDS with the Kubernetes.
Mhm.
So that didn't kind of work out with that one, but I just wanted to know like which one maybe I can probably, because it's just a single static application
Okay.
that I did. So
Okay. Yeah. So we can look at it next week and
okay.
see. And prior to that, if you want to meet, you and I can meet sometime this week and work on it. So that
Okay.
way, when we present it to everyone else, it's not something that's all over the place where we are spending all
Okay.
day troubleshooting stuff.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
you can just, once we get that done, then you can just kind of demo it and explain how it works.
Okay. Do you want me to hit you up on Slack with that? Because I'm available like I don't know, in the afternoon is fine.
Okay.
I
I'll
think on
say,
Tuesday I have class or something like that.
okay, yeah, sometime during the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, any of those days works for me.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Have a good weekend. I'll see you, some of you during the week and the rest of you next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, everyone.
All right, no problem. Bye.